Welcome back to the lots of lesson three for them in lessons. Me, lesson three, same people again, just going through that unit. So we'll start off with Ashley, who I'll be looking at deep understanding, background knowledge, and higher order thinking for her feedback sort of stuff. So to start with, great lesson again. You're smashing it so far. Keep up the good work. But yeah, I thought your deep understanding through that sort of multimodal instruction was one of your strongest aspects of this lesson. You used combining with like experiments, animated videos, diagrams, verbal explanations, written reflection to explain that sort of thermoregulation and negative feedback mechanisms. I think your layering of models really helped the students sort of construct meaning rather than just like receive that information. So good work there. You use physical experiments, which is a great way to sort of as a hook in an engagement with the kids, like the monitoring heart rate, um, or placing the hands in warm and cold water. Thought that was excellent. And yeah, sort of made an abstract concept of that feedback loops, and a loop's visible and it's tangible to the students. So good work with that sort of layering and using those different ways of thinking. And your explanations clearly linked the roles of the nervous and endocrine systems as well, reinforcing that conceptual understanding rather than treating them as like separate systems. You're able to identify how they work really well all together. So good work there. In terms of background knowledge, you intentionally connected the new content to the students' sort of lived experiences, which I thought was great. That, as I was saying, that opening experiment was awesome, and the animated video to sort of activate that prior knowledge and understanding how the temperature changes in exercise and body responses, which was super effective for an online session and an online lesson as well. So, good work with those experiments and activities there. And you also provided sort of those provided multiple entry points as well there. So watching, doing the experiments, reading about some things, and then like reflecting them as well. Promoting that engagement throughout the lesson rather than sort of just the students sitting there just watching you speak to them. So yeah, great work in the way you also encourage the students to choose an experiment, and then record their observations as well. They could have done both if they wanted to, but yeah, giving that student choice within the lesson was excellent as well. So great work there with your background knowledge. And then with your higher order thinking, I love the case studies. And with the heat stroke and hypothermia, I thought it was a really effective strategy to promote that higher order thinking, because the tasks require students to apply their understanding to the topics, analyze what sort of has gone wrong within that feedback loop, and then explain the consequences for the body within that sort of process. So asking the students to explain the scenarios in their own words as well, move that learning beyond recall into that analysis and application. So the case studies there were an excellent way to promote that higher order thinking. So great work there. Um, but yeah, you could also, if you wanted to strengthen that, you could probably look at including like a comparison prompt. For example, asking students to compare how the body responds in heat strokes versus hypothermia. To yeah, support that evaluation. But other than that, I thought the case studies were excellent. So good work. But yeah, overall, really well designed lesson. Your teacher presence was really good. Your instructions were clear. You had consistent pacing and purposeful sequencing of activities. So I thought it was a really, really good online lesson. And yeah, really powerful for the students to sort of engage in their learning as well. So great work. Looking forward to your final lesson next week. And we'll move on to Sam. Sam, another lesson with the drawing, so that was looking forward to this one. Your feedback sheet stayed the same, so it'll still be deep knowledge, high expectations, and substantive communication, as per that feedback sheet. But we'll start with background knowledge. Again, you sort of a clear strength there was your small number of concepts that you focus on. I really like how you're just honing in on one of them for each of your lessons. And this lesson was that choice of movement and the sort of 6 types of transitions, which were identified in that book that you were going through, by Scott McLeod, I think it was. But yeah, I'm loving how you're treating the comics, um, not just as a drawing, but you're consistently positioning them as a language for communicating time, emotion, and meaning in those different transition types. your explanation of the movement to movement, action to action, scene to scene, and so forth, demonstrated really good knowledge of the subject and helped students understand how their narrative decisions sort of shape the reader experience. So great work there. And then the visual examples alongside your verbal explanation supported that clarity within that online lesson. So yeah, deep knowledge is a really, really good strength of yours. So well done on that front. uh, High expectations there. I think your lesson communicated those high expectations through those complexity of the concepts that you introduced, and the expectation that the students would intentionally plan and justify their narrative choices rather than just doing it and copying you. So yeah, I think that was an expectation sort of just embedded throughout the lesson. You asked the students to create that multi-panel comic for extension, experiment with multiple different movement styles and positions, which was a task that sort of intellectually challenged them rather than just a pure technical. So similar to other lessons as well. If you're a horrible drawer, it doesn't mean you can't actually do the task because the way you got the students to think promoted that sort of intellectual challenge. So good work there. But again, it was a very much largely teacher directed lesson, not heaps of opportunities for students to engage in terms of class discussions and having their input and things like that. So that sort of flows onto substantive communication again. Sound like a bit of a broken record, but yeah, explanations were clear and more structured again. But yeah, online context makes it hard for you to gauge the understanding of the students. So really try and consider how you can identify ways that students can put their input into the lesson. But overall, well done. Another good online lesson. Your clear expectations were there. Your focus was there. You've got really good understanding and good ways of communicating that to the students. But yeah, just try and incorporate those opportunities for students to actively interact and demonstrate their understanding to you as well, so you know where they're at. But good work on another good lesson. Uh, cool. Tina, lesson 3, well done. Your feedback will be communication. Will be around meta language, student direction, and connectedness. I thought your lesson was excellent. Again, you're showing some really, really good stuff here. But to start with your meta language, I thought it was excellent. You use really explicit use of terms and scientific languages like communication, non-scientific communication, target audiences, analogies, and throughout your tasks, you use those terms and explain them really, really well. I love the comparison of a scientific journal article and the media explanation. Looking at the venomous cabbage examples there, it was very effective in helping the students sort of see how the same scientific information can be communicated completely differently depending on that audience there. So that was excellent. And yeah, that frequent commentary on language uses like that strong disciplinary literacy and aligns really well with that intellectual quality aspect there. So in an online context where clarity is so essential, I think you did that really, really well. So great work on your meta language there. With your connectedness, another great strong feature, you use like real world media examples, which I thought was excellent. You use news articles, social media posts, videos that clearly demonstrated how the genetic engineering is represented and sometimes misrepresented in society. So, but yeah, using those real world examples, I think, is really effective in connectedness for the students. You've got little short clips that they definitely would have seen on social media nowadays. So, I thought that was excellent way to sort of include that connectedness, get them thinking about what they're learning. So good work in that front. In terms of student direction, I thought that was another strong aspect of your lesson there. You provided a couple of opportunities for them to uh, choose what they wanted to do, whether that be create a video, infographic, poster, or social media post. It supports agency and differentiation in their learning. So great work there. That's a big aspect in student direction. Um, with your teaching, though, however, you probably could have incorporated some more student interaction throughout the teaching of your lesson rather than just at the end there. Whether that's a pause and complete a task, I'm not sure. That's up to you. But yeah, probably that's probably the one thing I would touch on would be incorporating moments for students to contribute, whether that be examples like identifying jargon or an analogy for genetic engineering, jargon in the media, or decide maybe like a poll to decide which communication method would be best based on a particular audience, something like that. But yeah, just sort of some incorporated student activities throughout the lesson would be good. But yeah, otherwise, I think your student direction was really clear. You showed them how to do it. The students were able to understand what they needed to do to complete the task successfully. So great work there. But yeah, overall, good lesson. Your meta language was excellent. You provided some real world examples and increased that connectedness within the learning, and just had clear links to that assessment task, and the student direction was good. So overall, great work. Looking forward to watching your last video.